Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? Jay here again. Thanks for tuning in. This is our coffee Q&A live stream with Practical Brewing. So we're here, and yesterday, one of our viewers, Dan, was asking me about Osmotic Flow, and I was like, I've never really heard about that. So I did a little bit of video watching this morning after I got here to the roastery, and to learn a little bit more about this Osmotic Flow. And I thought, why don't we give it a try? And he was explaining to me yesterday that they're pouring down the center. And I found this guy online, Brewing Habits. Is it Brewing Habits? Yes, Brewing Habits on YouTube here. They do this. He was showing the style. And so he was like, okay, you want to have 900 or 1300 microns. So fairly fine grind. And I believe that's because they want to give some level of resistance, because on their video, they're using the Hario V60. And like we've talked about before with the V60 or the Kinto, there's going to be a lot of flow rate because, there's just a lot of space for it to flow. And if you're not controlling that, then, you could have some issues. And I was watching his technique video, and he was talking about how this technique is from Japan, and it's really designed to pull the better qualities out of dark roasted coffee. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And as I was watching, it reminded me, then it clicked to me. The owner of Chate Hato, when you order his very special coffee, he does this type of brewing technique, but his is a very long, drawn out technique. So he uses one of these big Kalita pots, those copper ones with a long neck. Right, and he's pouring it, and he's doing this type of osmotic flow style, but it takes like 15 minutes. Like he's like just a little bit of pouring, just a little bit of pouring, 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 and it's really a fascinating thing to watch. I think I shot some video when I was there in like 2018. I'll have to look that up and see if I can load it up. And I've been wanting to do a video at Chate Hato, but I did not have a chance to go there when I was in Tokyo this past trip. So that will have to wait for another trip sometime in the future. But anyway, so this Osmotic Flow, really, I'm actually kind of fascinated. So he's talking about lower water temperatures. So 80 degrees Celsius, about 176, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. For the water temperature, he's talking about higher brew concentration ratio. So his brew ratio is 1-13, and the demonstration showed 20 grams and 260 grams of water. If you're interested in seeing that video, he's really got a lot of detail in it. A lot of it which I wasn't able to absorb in one pass. But the link is in the description below, so you can check that out and see what I've referenced to get a better idea of what I'm talking about, because I don't really have a good idea of what I'm talking about. But so that's the idea. Is you want to have pretty finely ground coffee. You want to have lower temperature water. And I guess, when you're using higher temperature waters, closer to 200 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Celsius, 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really more like 95. Anyway, you're going to be pulling out of the dark roasted coffee a lot more, the bitters a lot more, the stuff that makes, dark roasted coffee relatively unpleasant. And as I was doing my tour of Japan, of the coffee shops there in Tokyo, there's a lot of dark roasted coffee at the kisatens, right? Like when I'm in Japan, I'm really visiting kisaten and not visiting the third wave specialty coffee joints, because you know what? I'm up here in third wave. I live third wave. I'm part of the third wave. Last thing I want to do is go to another country and see more of the same precious geisha, lightly roasted coffee that people are paying a lot of money for that doesn't really have soul. Yeah, there it is. I said it. I'm in the circle, and I said it. But anyway, so let's get into it, and let's give it a try. But for today, we're going to be using this. Like before, I've been telling you about, we had the Melita. What's this? $3, $4, $5 at the grocery store. The rest are kind of expensive, comparatively. But this is the Daiso Home Cafe Brewer. Let me show you this from here. Why is it always doing this? So when I'm on YouTube, when I'm transmitting through YouTube, it reverses everything. I don't get it. Am I reversed on this side? Can you read this sign? I tell you what, man, this whole live stream thing, there's always something that's like kind of wonky about it. StreamYard is simple and it keeps everything in correct orientation, but it only has a 720p resolution. Then when you go through YouTube itself, it has 1080, but it looks like it's reversing everything. You can read everything. Okay, maybe it's just from my perspective that, all right, excellent. Okay, good. As long as you can read everything. And is this scale on the left side of the screen or the right? Let me know. All right, so we've got our home cafe. This I picked up at Daiso. There's a Daiso in Riverside, New Jersey, that is just outside of New York City. Every time I go to the New York City for whatever conference I'm attending, I've lately been driving because there's a whole like world of Japanese. There's grocery store, Mitsuya, there's the Kinokuniya bookstore, there's Little Tokyo for whatever like home goods you might want, and then there's a Daiso, which means that there's a lot of shopping. I don't do much shopping in New York City. I come to New Jersey and then do all my shopping there, right? But anyway, so this is the Daiso Home Cafe, and it is, it's on the left. Excellent. Okay, great. Glad to hear. So this is 500 yen, which is about $5.62. And so it's fairly inexpensive, all stainless steel construction. So as you can see, there's a laser etched, has to be laser etched because I don't think stamps can do this, but laser etched mesh or, perforated walls, and then metal mesh interior. Now you can ostensibly brew with this. Yeah, it's designed to brew just like this, right? You don't have to use any kind of paper filters. However, I'm not a big fan of these kind of mesh things because you know what? No matter what you do, there's always little particles that will get stuck. Sometimes little particles will flow through that, and then they're kind of stuck between the mesh and the perforations, and you never get it out. And that just drives me bonkers. So today we're going to try, but we're going to use the paper filter because also in the osmotic brewing, we want to use the filter. So we're going to use a typical Melita number 4, and we're going to fold it in our normal way of using the, what do you call it? The seam to seam fold. Can you see that? Good. Seam to seam. Oh, Dan says that's your experience too. Okay, yes. Yeah, it's actually quite annoying. All right, so there it is. We're going to put that in there. Oh, we're not going to start this yet because we don't have our coffee ready. All right, so for our purposes here, we're going to get some coffee. So I would tell you that I don't normally have dark roasted coffee here at the roastery, but that would be a lie because sometimes you burn coffee. I haven't done that in quite a long time. But however, I am in a position where people will give me coffee. They'll gift me coffee, and sometimes it's nicely roasted. Sometimes it's maybe a little bit on the darker side. Like I had one friend, terribly good friends, very, very good friends, and they know that I'm in coffee, and they want to share their love for their coffee, the coffee that they enjoy. And it's like, oh, we have this coffee. It's really special. We want to give you some. So they got this. They put some in a gallon plastic bag, and they gave it to me. It's a Kona, and it's super darkly roasted. Like it's brutally roasted. I was like, oh, like it's so brutally roasted that when it was in, I'll show it to you. So here's the bag, and like when they handed me the bag, and the bag was sealed, I could smell the coffee, and I was like, oh, you didn't have to. People are so joyous about what they enjoy, right? And they want to share it with you, and you're like, really, you don't want it? You're like, oh, I don't know, but I'm not gonna be like that. But I'm gonna okay, I'm happy to accept it. I'm thankful that you're willing to share with me. I feel loved and blessed that you're willing to do that. And actually, now that it's been a while, it's not as brutal. The aroma is not as brutal. The fragrance is really brutal. Here, I'll show you a little bit of it. So it has mellowed in tone and time. You can, there it is. So actually, looking at it now, it's really not, it doesn't smell that bad. Actually, it might be a good time to start drinking it. But that's sometimes we want to give you dark roasted coffee. So there's always dark roasted coffee somewhere here. So I'm glad that I can have something to use for this trial. But today I've got this coffee that some friends gave to me. This is the Rusty's Hawaiian Ka'u Classic Dark Roast. And I got this. I think I got this at the trade show. Like I think Ralph and Rusty had some extra bags, and they're like, "Here, man, take this with you." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I don't know if I'm going to drink it, but maybe I'll find a time to drink it, right?" But this is from Rusty, from Lori. This is going to be beautiful coffee to begin with. Like I do believe they produce some of the best coffee in the world, and so the quality of the coffee is never a question. The roasting, well, we'll see. But now that we have an opportunity to try Osmotic Flow with dark roasted coffee, perfect. This is perfect. There it is. Hawaii Ka'u Classic Dark Roast, full-bodied and smooth, with dark chocolate and cherry notes, which is probably a good thing now that we're trying it this way. And as you can see, they are award-winning since 2009. And yeah, they're beautiful coffees. When I first met Lori many years ago at her farm, I was just like, this woman is like doing crazy stuff. So all the crazy stuff you're seeing now in since 2020, all these different fermentations and processing methods, Lori was doing that back when I met her in 2008. Like some of the stuff you're seeing today that everyone's like, oh, this is the new and cool hot stuff. It's kind of old school to us. Anyway, let's get into this coffee. Let's see how it is. I'm gonna have to open it. See, as you can see, it's fresh coffee. Oh, you know what? Here, look at that. The roast is definitely on the darker side, but I wouldn't say that it's terribly dark. Like, actually, I'm wondering if this is even dark enough to use for this. Like at the Kisatens in Japan, like some of those coffees are really getting into like dark, like much darker than this. This kind of seems on the lighter side. Okay, 20 grams. We'll go with 21. Just a little bit, yeah, 21, so that we have some extra to play with. And here, all right, maybe this is a sign of like specialty coffee gone amok. But this is not what I would call dark roasted coffee. This is more medium plus roasted coffee. Well, that's lighter. Okay, but this is not as dark as I was expecting. Like, I think this would be the more dark coffee. Yeah, they're about the same, actually. Like, I think dark. And I'm thinking that we're starting to get really more deeper in, like, at Spro, we would roast, some of our guests really like dark roasted coffee, so we'd roast something called we called it the Night Watch. And we would use, like, really high quality coffees to do this. And one of the things with dark roast coffees at a lot of coffee roasteries is that a lot of the roasters, because they have this attitude about dark roasted, that it's dark roasted, so we're putting the char into it, and some people put a lot of char into it. They don't really care about the quality, so they're going to buy as cheap a quality of coffee as possible. Like, I never liked that idea. Like, that for me, it's always like, if you start out with something terrible, something crappy, there's no way you can make that into anything quality, anything worth drinking. And so we always used 83, 84 quality coffee for our Night Watch program. And It's funny because I wasn't really going to do, when we started roasting, I wasn't going to do dark roast. I was a purist. I'm like hardcore, right? I want to be like hardcore and show that, we're serious about coffee. But, the truth is sometimes you burn batches, right? So we didn't have it for a long time. And then one day I burned a batch, which means really that I kind of went beyond the normal roast profile. So it got a little bit dark, got a little bit, charred. And I was like, well, the hardcore guys in our business, they're always like, we just throw that away. But what kind of stupidity is that? Like, I mean, you've made the mistake of burning your coffee already. Now you're going to compound that by throwing it away. Like, you're just throwing. First of all, you're throwing money. Then you're throwing away quality product that you're not giving respect to all the work that's gone into it. You've already disrespected by burning it, I guess you could say. But it's like, anyway. So I was just like, well, let's send it down to the shop and put it on, call it Night Watch, and people ate it. I couldn't believe how well it sells. It sold. I was like, oh, people really like that. And then people started, because I had burned a batch of really high quality coffee. They were like, oh, well, that was really great. Can we get some more? And I was like, well, okay. So we just started, producing it as part of our normal routine. So there that is. Dan asks, are they oily? Been surprised with the recent coffee. With recent coffee I recently tried called medium dark, and the beans have been shiny. So the shininess can come from two things. So you can roast the coffee to the point that you're driving the oils out of it. Like if I take the coffee to 400, what's it would it be in? I'm trying to think in terms of Fahrenheit. Anyway, let's say if I bring it to 235 degrees, 235 degrees Celsius, then I'm driving the oils to the surface, which is probably like 450 degrees, I think, in Fahrenheit. Now, that's one way to do it. So you could drive the oils onto the surface just through the roasting process because you're going really high. Now, otherwise, sometimes coffees will exude oils, even letter roasted coffees, medium roasted coffees, as they sit. The longer they sit, the more that they can become a little bit oily. Like you'll notice if you keep your things in jars, this is a good example because I haven't washed it. But if you look at this jar was normally very clear. But as you can see, there's some oiliness on the inside because the coffee that had sat here for a while, of course, is started to excrete the oils that are inherent in the bean. So sometimes that will happen as well. So it's really a matter of just knowing, when the coffee was roasted. If you can find that out, that's always a big help and tell as to why that might be. And Tom is asking, did you see that Ben Morrow at Manhattan Coffee Roasters? Oh, did you see that Ben Morrow at Manhattan Coffee Roasters is doing sub 5-minute production roasts on their new Typhoon? Oh, I have not seen that. I'm going to have to look that up. Sub 5-minute production roast. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's like, that is completely wrong and there's something wrong with that guy. But you know what? If it tastes great, then I'm presuming that the Typhoon, and I'm not familiar with the Typhoon. Like, let me know, Thomas, what you think. What kind of roaster is the Typhoon? Is it just a standard drum roaster? Or is it like forced air, like the convection, like the Lohrings? I'm actually not familiar with the Typhoon. There's a lot of technology that happens in coffee that I don't always get to keep up with at the moment that it happens. So, like with this osmotic brewing, Dad said it yesterday, so we're going to give it a try. Oh, we should get back and giving it a try. Okay, here's our coffee ready to go. Rusty's Code Dark Roast. Let's give it a go. I'm going to fine up the grind. All right, we're going to go with this, whatever setting I have on the Compact R80. If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, then it doesn't work. So we notice here, there's a bit more, it's hard to see, I can see that, but there is a bit more static with this coffee in this grinder from the last week or so. I'm going to take this, put that in there, and we're going to shuffle it around. Okay, there you go. I think you can see that a lot better. Where are we with water temperature? Let's have a check with our water temperature. 179. All right, we're still good. Excellent. I'm going to boost it up just a little bit because what I have to do is I'm going to transfer into our pouring kettle. And the pouring kettle is cold, so I just want to boost the temperature just a little bit so that I can heat up the pouring kettle. And then we can begin. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting about Brewing Habits videos that he did this kind of gangster brewing. Like, we normally brew like this, right? He's using the Hario Bono kettle. So he's brewing like this, kind of like, like you would with the, it's kind of got this side thing. Now, I can't do that. This is too tall and too sloped for me to hold it sideways and pour correctly. But the nice thing about this particular kettle is that it has this pelican beaked pouring spout, which allows it incredible controllability while pouring. So we're going to see that. And Dan says, I'm not experienced with roasting, but makes you think that a 5-minute roast, would it be under roasted in the interior? It could be. And that's always about heat penetration. I guess it kind of goes to your philosophy. We do longer term roasts because we want to have, that penetration of the heat. We want to have that heat penetrate into the interior of the coffee. Now, maybe this Typhoon has a way of, or maybe this guy Ben has found a way to do that at a more rapid rate. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, I think it always goes back to how does it taste, right? Like, I would sit here and talk about this coffee, for example, just a little while ago. Like, oh, it smells kind of offensive. It's roasted kind of dark. So even me, I have this problem with already. I'm prejudging the coffee. Like, oh, I can't drink that because that's just nasty. It smells nasty. But just on looks alone, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. But really, the only way to know is whether it's something that you can enjoy or not is if you taste it, right? So perhaps Ben has found a way to make great tasting coffee in 5 minutes. So if you could do that 5 minutes. Now, the hard part is that even if you brought it to the right temperature, you cool it down, you still have, I don't know how you can really increase the amount of volume you can process in an hour. Like, for example, in our roasters, we're doing 4 batches an hour. Like, I don't know if there's a way to do that because it also has to cool. Maybe we can use cryogen freezing. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to start brewing. And one of the things that I didn't notice in the video, and maybe he said this and I missed it, which could very well be the case. Where is my... I'm just going to get my phone. Can't find the timer. So, these are the things, you get ready for a live stream and you just don't really remember to get everything you really need because you're using it for everything else in the world. All right, so let's put this here. Good. All right, so this guy from Brewing Habits said that we want to pour, in the initial pour, 3 times the dose, which goes 60 grams. Oh, here's the timer. Anyway, we'll do this. So we're going to pour 60 grams, and just in the center, maybe a little bit of circular in the center. All right, 60 grams. We're going to wait 10 seconds, so we're going to wait till 28 seconds. And then we're going to pour 1/3 of the total liquid, so 120 grams, down the center. 28 seconds. Now we're going to pour, so up to 180 grams. Or maybe I'm supposed to be slower. Dan, I was trying this technique on our live stream last night using the Quinto 180. See, this is not working. 180. So as you can see, we're getting already, it's not floating high enough. And I think that's because there's so much flow running through. Oh, we're supposed to wait 5 seconds and now go all the way to 260. Oops. So I raised the water level and I'm trying to hold it, but I'm already out of time, 262 degrees. So as we continue, I think I'm going too fast. Wait 5 seconds, remove the brewer. So I don't know what, 1 minute, 40 seconds. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, so let's see here. Just to catch up a little bit. I have seen that style of pour. Oh, I'm not sure what you mean with this one. The full bed. Thomas says the full fluid bed roasters can roast this fast without issues. Okay. And then I can't get the dome either way. So here's the thing. So like, what I was thinking last night on the live. So I like I said, I don't know if I said this before, but I do a live stream on Thursday nights on the Ono Live channel where we make coffee as well as and smoke cigars. That's really, it's just a vehicle for me to smoke cigars with people online and talk coffee. That was kind of the connection. So I was using the Quinto, and I think this has a similar issue. Is the flow rate out of like the Quinto and the V60, because of this large orifice at the bottom, I think is a major factor in this. Like of course, in Brewing Habits video, he's using a V60 and he's really got the flow down. But I have to think that that 900 or 1300 microns, and I don't have a micrometer to measure that here, but it's got to be super fine coffee in order for it to float that long. And I think that at Chate Hato, they actually, grind the coffee super fine for that, because he's really brewing it super slow. And I'm definitely going too fast because I'm trying to raise the dome and hold the dome. And when you're using something that has high flow rate like this, I'm sure this is. Oh, he's also using a cloth filter, which may have a different effect. And this just has, the porosity is basically just everywhere. Like there's no resistance. Just like, I'm sure if I poured this into something, like let's look at like if I poured this, like look at that. I mean, there's some resistance, but the porosity is very, very high. So, oh well. More stuff to play with and experiment as we go. Let's have a look at the coffee here. I'm going to pour it into our cup. There's good clarity, but of course, we are using a paper filter, so the clarity is good. And if one thing I also should note, that I don't wash, you may have noticed, I don't rinse the paper filters, mainly because I'm using white paper filters, bleach paper filters. I've done extensive testing, and there is no need to do any kind of rinsing when it comes to bleach paper filters because they're clean tasting. You can find the video on the channel. It's a couple years old now, but I did a tasting of many different filters from many different sources, and uniformly, all of the ones that were from bleached did not need rinsing. However, if you use unbleached, the natural one, the eco-friendly, the one that you're like, I'm saving the planet while brewing coffee, Those you need to rinse because those have a heavy paper flavor. It's kind of tasting like you took a grocery bag and poured water through it to drink. All right, let's see. There's definitely a roastier profile to this nose. A lot of bitterness coming through. Not so much body, some sweetness. Like I think it's at a minute 40. I do think it's under extracted. I don't think there's good development. Definitely a lot of the bitterness is coming through. A lot of the roasty bitterness is coming through. Might be good with like chocolate covered donuts. I've got a peach Danish on the desk that I'm going to drink this with. But the peach Danish is here in Baltimore, like this time of year, peach cake is really popular. So they take a simple like sponge kind of cake and they put it into a sheet tray and they put peaches on top, fresh peaches. Very pleasant, very light, very like summery flavor. And so there's one bakery that I go to, they do like peach Danish with those peaches. So a little bit sweeter, a little bit more nicer texture that I like, a little more of that flaky texture rather than a cakey texture. And so every once in a while, I'll go grab some there. They're like one of the old stalwarts. Like, you know, in this whole world of baking, there's like all these pretty bakers, right? Making rustic breads and French, you know, pastries, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love a really well-made croissant and a baguette. Like, I'm very picky about baguette. I can't go to I must go to one place because they're the ones that for me taste the best. But places like this, it's a place called Simon's Bakery. And they're just a wonderful American old school bakery, like the kind of bakery that I grew up eating around here. Donuts and cakes and cookies, just very like old school Americana. And like, it's like when you want to have old school American bakery, this is the kind of place you go to. You go to a place in Baltimore, you go to a place like Simon's, you go to a place like Fenwick. I think Herman's is open still somewhere. Like, these are the old school classics, like working class bakery. Love it, love it. Anyway, let's see what was in. Dan's asking, would you try the mesh cone with a paper filter? Well, I mean, this is, yeah, why not? I mean, this is kind of a mesh cone as well. So, yeah, I would definitely use it. You know, for me, so when it comes with mesh cone filters like this and perforated filters, because they are relatively large in their porosity, they allow a lot of the sediment, the minor sediment, and the oils to flow through. So you get something similar to the mouthfeel that you would get with like a French press. Now, sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. If I don't want that, then I'll use a filter. One of the things that I do use a filter for with these kind of things, because honestly, I really hate it when like the small pieces get stuck between the two membranes, right? The mesh filter that's here, right? The mesh filter that's here, and then the perforated walls. So I will sometimes just use paper filters just to keep it cleaner, you know, just to have a cleaner brew, cleaner equipment. Because otherwise I might get obsessive and try to like get the part that's the little tiny particles that are stuck between. I might be there for like an hour trying to get that out. And that's not conducive to living. Dan wants to know, would you try, oh, yeah, we did that one. And Thomas says, could you use Abaca light papers if you want to slow it down? You know what? I can't even, you know, proposition myself and say that I know what Abaca light papers means, but I'm not sure what Abaca papers are. But I would, you know, because as papers have, a lot of papers will have levels of porosity, right? So as long as you get one that has a good porosity, you could use it to slow down the brew. But I think that, you know, if you're using, like, let's say a V60, and you're using a paper filter, right? That's already, this is giving you a lot of resistance. Now, if you want more resistance, then you want to look for something that, like this bee house, that has two holes at the bottom, or the Melita that only has one hole at the bottom. You can kind of see that one hole there in the center, and that will give you a more natural resistance to the flow so that you can build that dome and kind of hold it there. Otherwise, with the V60 or something, you're going to need to use, maybe paper would help, but also I think that you have to go finer on your coarseness, finer on your grind for the coffee to give more resistance, right? Because really it's the coffee that provides the resistance against the flow of the water. Well, coffee, paper, and then the orifice, right? But the finer you don't control any of these other stuff. You can control the grind. So go really fine on the grind and you get greater resistance. Think about it like if you were to take espresso grind coffee and put it into a portafilter and pour it into a paper filter, you would get a lot longer of an extraction because it's so fine. So somewhere in between there is going to be the sweet spot for whatever you're trying to brew. And I'm going to have to look more at this Chate Hato video. I don't have a really good close-up on it, but he's using a very fine grind. He's using like a V60 or something like that, maybe Melita or something, and he's brewing super slow. And if you want to look it up online, I'm sure there's somebody that has a video on YouTube. Chate Hato, Chatei. That's one word. Hato, Hatou, and it's a place in the Shibuya district. Old like coffee spot, opened like in 1989. So right at the end of the Showa era, like this guy, he opened, I think, right before the emperor died. So he's still technically part of that Showa era Kisaten scene. And yeah, check that out. And you'll see that he's really pouring, super meticulous. Like really, it takes him 15 minutes to brew a cup. And it's the most expensive coffee on his menu. Thomas says, Cafe Abaca papers come in slow, medium, fast speeds. Oh, okay. The slow one is called light, and it's hilariously slow. Like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Brew on the medium will be 7. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you give that a try. That should work. And actually, maybe in those kind of cases, let's say something like that can take a 2.5 minute brew, make it 7. This may be the kind of thing where you take that paper filter, you put it in, you add the coffee. And so this technique of this osmotic flow really is about doing it slowly, right? So you could probably just sit there, and I would surmise that maybe we could fill it up, create the dome, let it fall, wait that like, and who knows, maybe this guy's actually using Abaca paper filters in the video, but I'll have to watch it closely. And let it form, let it fall. So there's an interval of 3 times the dose, so 60 grams, wait 10 seconds, add 120 grams, wait 5 seconds, add the remaining volume to 260 grams of water, wait 5 seconds for it to fall, and then pull it. Now, you may have to, modify that, like, especially if using this Abaca papers, where if it's really lengthening out to 7 minutes, I might just let the whole thing fall in 7 minutes and see how it tastes. Like, that could be, for osmotic brewing, that could be the easy way to do it instead of all this meticulous pouring. Dan says, Abaca said to have the least flavor. Haven't used them much. I'll have to check that out. I'm going to have to look those up and maybe order some and give it a try. And Dan said, would love to visit Kisaten one. Yeah, I totally recommend. Like right now, it's relatively expensive to fly to Tokyo, to Asia in general. But there's such a vibrant coffee scene in Japan that I find really interesting. Like, because I work in third wave specialty, as I travel, especially to other parts of the world, like if I'm in like Europe or something, usually that's pretty much where I'll go, is the typical third wave kind of coffee shop, because, that's pretty much what they have. But if I'm in other parts of the world where there's actually a historical culture of coffee, I'm kind of interested in exploring that. Like when I was in Malaysia, I asked my friend, I was like, hey, let's go. I would like to see these kopitiams, which are these Chinese coffee places that serve some food in this, particular style of brewed coffee. And, fascinating. And then we toured a coffee roastery there that, for the, especially, if you're like a hardcore purist of coffee, like I can see some of the roasteries we visit would be horrifying to you. You'd be like, oh my God, man. It's like, but for me, it's so fascinating because this is like where the coffee culture came from generations ago, right? Like third wave specialty coffee, this is my generation. We started this really in early 2000s. That's really when it became something, and it's still and codified itself into what it kind of morphed into today. But I'm interested to see what happened before, right? Like, so when I'm in Japan, there's a whole culture of what's called kisaten, and that started, in the Showa era, right after World War II. And it's a very different coffee world. Like Jeff Hoffman and I were talking one year, and I remember he said that he went to my favorite cafe, which is Cafe del Hombre in Ginza, and he thought it was the worst coffee he'd ever had, and it's just like, for me, it's like I'm not so. And this is back in like 2007, I think it was, when we were there for the World Championship, and of course, back then we're much younger. We're like within 5 to 6, 7, 8 years of our inception in coffee. So when you're early in your career, like you're very strong. You've learned enough knowledge to have very strong opinions. And so as you continue in the craft and profession, and you learn more, you become. I find that the people that have been in the business the longest tend to be the ones with the least amount of superlatives. So my superlatives, my dogma has toned down a lot over the last 20 years. So anyway, what else do we have to say? Yeah, so definitely, if you get a chance to go to Japan, go visit the Kisaten. If you need to, when you finally get there, let me know. I'll give you a list of places to go. There's so many that I've been to, and there's so many that I haven't been to that are so very worth checking out. So some days it's just like a lot, like 3 or 4 or 5 Kisaten stops. It's a lot of coffee, but quite rewarding. So Dan asked, if it's that slow, does it make you wonder about thermal management? I mean, sure. Let's say like you're using something like this. This is a lot more exposed, and your metal is probably shedding heat a lot quicker. Whereas like something thick like this Kinto will not shed the heat as much. It'll better thermal properties. The plastics, I don't know. What's the plastic performance with heat? Probably a little bit better than the metal. But do I worry so much about? No, not really. If I'm pouring close to the temperature that I desire, I'm not necessarily worried about holding that temperature through the brewing process. The temperature of water is always going to be cascading downwards. Nothing to worry too much about. I don't think. Like there are ways to maintain water temperature in the vessel, but then that becomes a lot more scientific, a lot more technical, and a little bit more engineering, because now we're looking at ways like, how do we maintain heat in this vessel? I'm really trying to get a cup of coffee at 7 in the morning. I don't necessarily want to worry about that. What I have always wondered about is like, we use these brew towers for cold brew. And, one of the problems with the brew towers is that there's this valve that you got to control the dropping of the water, right? And you want a particular flow rate. And I've always been thinking, maybe I need to get one of those IV drip machines that regulates the flow of the IV into your veins. And maybe I can rig that to utilize that to rig as the method of dripping onto the coffee. Well, that's for future endeavors. All right. So any other questions, let me know. We will not have any live streams over the weekend. Probably return on Monday. And I don't know, should we keep on this journey with more pour overs or switch to other brewers? There's so many more brewers. I even have an AeroPress XL that's coming in that should have been here a month ago, but Who knows? Was supposed to arrive yesterday, didn't arrive yesterday. Supposed to come today, who knows if it'll come today. That's been a very long, frustrating journey. But anyway, got some more videos coming out this weekend. This weekend, we've got the video from Sometimes I Feel, which is this cafe in Bangkok, Thailand. I was there at the end of May. Stopped in for a couple of days to visit some friends and check out some of the coffee scenes. This is a really interesting place where they're really focused on signature drinks. And the owner isn't a coffee person. Like, he's an artist. He came from the art world, art school, and his family had this building, this space, and he decided to do like an art gallery and then wanted to make it into a cafe. And I went there, and really lovely coffee, really interesting coffee. Like, their focus is on signature drinks, right? Different concoctions of drinks. And so I got to try what they call their Thai Dirty, which is a play on Thai-style dirty coffee, but using more modern techniques, meaning that they're using, instead of using sweetened condensed milk, they're actually using milk that is mixed with palm sugar to get a nice flavor. And the palm sugar is also very central in Thai cooking, so I think that also plays into the flavor role. All right. Yeah, so that's going to be it. I hope you have a great weekend out there, and thanks for tuning in, Dan, Thomas, good to see you, and everybody else. If you're watching the replay, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And back again with more practical brewing here on the Coffee Q&A as we move on into next week. All right, so hope everything's good. Have a great one, and see you next time. Thanks, Dan.